I'm recording this Monday.
Sorry. Okay. Good morning and welcome. 6th of September, and this is our Mercury Bay Community Board meeting. I'd just like to ask Councillor Connell if she may open with a Karakia for us, please.
Let me just touch the stage. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa po namu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. Huye, taie. May peace be widespread. May the sea be like green stone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together.
I can't one of these.
Right, so item 1.2 is apologies, and I'd like to note that we have an apology for Chair Chrissy Robertson, and also online we do have Councillor Grant and Community Board member Carolyn Hodman online. And item 1.3 is may I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Thanks, Bess. Seconded by Peter. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carried. The next item is item 1.3, which is a deputation or a presentation from Creative Correspondence. So welcome, Christine. Just to let you know, you've got 15 minutes to...
I was talking about 5.
Oh, right. Okay. And I'm going to use my timer just to make sure it's fair for everybody. Welcome.
Kia ora, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me today. Thanks for having a meeting this week while I happen to be here. My name's Christine Ennis and I'm from Hawke's Bay, beautiful Hawke's Bay, but I'm enjoying being up here despite the heavy rain and the power cut yesterday, which was a bit of an experience for me. Anyway, that aside, I'm here on behalf of Creative Coromandel and the Mercury Bay Arts Steering Committee, which comes under their auspices. They have received funding to undertake a feasibility study to look into the viability of establishing an art centre here in Whitianga. So what am I doing here this week? I'm talking to lots of people. I'm listening to lots of people. That's what I'm here for, because part of the feasibility study is involving, obviously, community involvement to find out things like, is there a need for it? Is there support for it? If there is, what should be included in it? What activities should take place in it? Where should it be located? And can it be funded? If so, how? So there's all those questions to consider. But in the first instance, I'm just here to listen to people and what they think about the proposal. The Mercury Bay Arts Steering Committee has come up with a vision for this facility, and that is to establish a flexible arts facility in Te Whanganui-o-Hei, Mercury Bay, which serves diverse creative expression and all art forms, bringing communities together to create, collaborate, learn and be inspired. And there's certain things that they think need to exist to actually show if this project is successful or not. And the key thing is working in collaboration with mana whenua, with other key partners and community organisations to ensure that there is a successful outcome for all. They also think the support and buy-in of the wider community, as well as the arts community, is a key factor. They consider how this project could contribute to the economy through local business and tourism opportunities. The project would need to be able to be funded, attract funding to it, and be financially sustainable, and acknowledge the Coromandel culture in the facilities development and design. And then they have developed a project critical path, which they will track and report on as the project progresses, should it go ahead. So some of the findings so far, I've talked to a few people. We've actually got some public meetings tomorrow, which I would like to invite everybody to, if you're not already coming to it. It's a morning one at 9:15 in the town hall and another one at 4:30 p.m. tomorrow. So what I have found is people are very keen to give their opinions about this project and to be heard on it, which is absolutely great. I have also found that perhaps the thing that's come through, which has been a little bit surprising to me, but is very important, is to be mindful of new technologies and new art forms that are developing, particularly in the digital space, and also thinking about that when actually fitting out and designing a building. It needs to be future-proofed. You know, things change quite rapidly in the art scene, as they are in the whole, you know, of life with AI and so forth. So that's something that has come through, and also whatever is developed needs to add to and enhance what is already here in terms of arts. So they don't want it to obviously take away anything from the businesses, for example, that are already here, that are involved in arts and so forth, but to be able to make things even better, be an attraction that people will come here. I know you've got the roads problem that has come up quite a lot, thankfully too. We've had that somewhat in Hawke's Bay as well, following the cyclone. So just a bit about the time frame. Well, Ngāti Hei has been involved from the outset in this proposal and actually assisted with the preparation of the application to Lottery Community Facilities Fund, which has given the funding to undertake the feasibility study. And at this point, I don't have a meeting with a Ngāti Hei representative this week, although that might be changing as I'm speaking here. If not, I will come back and meet face-to-face with them, because that's very important. And so that would likely not be until November, which then means that the final draft of this document will not be ready until the end of November, late November. And the final document would be completed by mid-December. And the report, findings and recommendations will be shared with you, the Mercury Bay Community Board, once they've been received by the Arts Steering Committee and Creative Correspondence. So just to finish off, as I said, I thought I only had 5 minutes, not 15. I would like to raise with you a question just for you to think about now. I'm certainly not expecting any immediate answer, but how prepared is Council to partner in this initiative with Creative Correspondence and the Arts Steering Group? And specifically, what would the Council bring to the project? So I just leave you with that.
Thank you. Just scribbling down some notes. Were there any questions for Christine? Yes. Sorry, Peter first, then Delly.
Christine, I'm just on your wish list. What would you like to see contained within the Arts Centre?
Well, it's not for me to say. I'm listening to what people are saying. I have mostly so far met with visual artists and only one sort of performing artist. But the visual arts feel there needs to be a gallery space for sure for exhibitions. They feel that's a real gap here in this part of the Coromandel. So, yeah. I should also mention that Creative Coromandel wanted to see whether the communities of Taiaroa and further south down the eastern seaboard would be interested also in being part of using this facility if it existed. So this afternoon, I'm actually going down to run a meeting at Taiaroa, and we'll see what interest there is maybe from down that way.
Great.
Cool.
Delly.
So Christine, we've met online, so I'm the observer from Council in that group, and sadly some of the recent meetings have clashed with Council business. But one of the conversations I've had with a couple of people from Ngāti Hei is about in Opanoni. There's a facility or a interactive cultural experience called the Footprints of Kupe.
Okay.
And I take on board what you were saying about technology, and this is a multimedia facility which utilises spoken word, song, visuals. You're sitting in your chair and Hazen is waka, and there's water spraying out of the arms of your chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, will you be looking at other facilities around the country that have utilised their cultural currency to become a multi-purpose space.
Yes, indeed. There will be a section in the feasibility study of case studies
Yeah.
of other facilities around the country. And even if I can find some overseas,
Cool.
then they'll be included. Yep.
So that Opanoni one, I would encourage Ngāti Hey. I've actually talked to a few Ngāti Hey people about
Okay.
going and having a look at that. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I took a long time to get to my question.
No,
That's okay.
no,
Thank you.
for that. I've noted that. I'll have a look.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Bess on Community Board. I'm there just on the ground for our own town here for Tiana. I'm not into the spraying and the technology and all that. I'm just here grounding.
Right.
Okay, the art. So I'm looking at the existing art space, the things you have every year here, it's artist.
Hardscape.
Okay, is that going to be included? Is that under the umbrella or is that the same
Well,
thing?
I am talking to Artiscape people. Until I've spoken with them, I'm not sure what their interest or involvement would be in it. So I can't really say at this point.
And I
But
just,
they are clearly very active here in the arts scene. So there's, a group I need to speak with.
cool. And another thing, is it all art forms? Because at the moment, I'm looking at kapahaka, morako, ballet.
Yeah.
All dance forms, artists in the making, weaving. Those things.
At this point,
Those are all inclusive,
Yeah,
because all I can see is paintings
no.
and pottery. That's
No,
what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm just bringing in all the,
At this point, there are no limitations. They have said all art forms in their vision they're looking at. So yes.
thank you.
Okay, there's no other questions for Christine. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I will be one of those folks that you'll see tomorrow.
Lovely.
All right. Thanks so much.
At 9:15 and Corsi.
Hopefully I'll be at the port there.
Okay. All right. Do we need a mover in a second?
Please.
May I have a mover and a seconder to receive? Thank you, Deli. Seconded by Bess. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? None. Carried. All right. The next item is item 1.4, which is our public forum. Now, I just would like to remind our guests that this meeting is being recorded, that you do have 5 minutes to address the board, and the board may ask you questions just for points of clarification. But this isn't the forum to get into a robust discussion or debate. So I'd like to invite our first speaker, which is Steve Lloyd.
Deja vu, I was here 14 months ago. Anyway, my name is Steve Lloyd. I'm a permanent resident of Crooks Beach. One of my staff.
Oh, okay.
I'll sit down. Right for a second.
That's good.
My presentation is to discuss the Crooks Beach Lakes waterways. Well, it's not a presentation as such. It's questions that have been raised since 14 months ago. I sat here and we put a proposal to the then community board, for which Rika and Delhi were the only members. All the other community board have now gone, and as well as the councillors. So to a large extent, this is sort of new ground for the bulk of the community board, apart from the two people I've mentioned. And so in July 2022, a group of residents requested TCDC consider the placement of silver grass carp as a weed control measure into the waterways. That request was accepted overwhelmingly by the then community board members and council at the time, with the request going to staff to investigate. Consequently, we were told that the staff would investigate. We were aware of council commissioning a water quality company to further investigate in October 2022. Since then, nothing, despite numerous requests from council to find out what progress, if any, was happening. We were stonewalled. Nothing was said at all or given back to us. And then what happened, we had the summer storm events. And in fairness to the council, we backed off a bit. We thought it's not fair chasing an organisation that's been hammered in terms of so we thought there's more important things than a bit of weed in the lake for the council to worry about. So we let it go. for the time being, but over the intervening months, that weed has come back and there's been no control. The spraying that was done has been stopped. As a measure, the council won't do that anymore. We've been told that. And I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but there's a report that's come out on the lakes, which is to be formally lodged this morning. And I'm not jumping the gun because on page 50 of that report, which was that little bit there, that information was passed to me by a staff member last year when I was inquiring. So I already knew that, and I went back and challenged it because from my information, that's a clear cut and paste off the internet about koi carp. And as I've said in there, page 50 is a half-page comment on the carp, generally full of false and misleading information. They talk about escaping to other waterways. I actually went around the lake with a staff member and we pointed out where these fish would be fenced off. Would be a simple job to contain them in the waterway. There are no other waterways leading in. It all drains out to sea. And these fish have a very low salinity tolerance. If they escape down towards the Cooks Beach Hall in the stream, they won't last 5 minutes, they'll die. And so I challenged that and was told, because I asked pointed questions, I was banned from talking to a certain staff member. I got a response back from his team leader saying he would investigate, and I've heard nothing, even though, and I've had second and third opinions on these comments about the grass carp in this report. And you can get these cut and paste jobs on any internet site relating to koi carp. And in case the community board members aren't aware, koi carp are an invasive, definitely unwanted species. And they are on the government dock and everybody's list to get rid of. No question about that. Koi carp are known to jump out of the water, climb up banks, eat birds, eggs and stuff like that. The grass carp are pure herbivores. And the other point in here is they say they undermine the banks. Well, there's no banks to undermine the Cooks Beach Lake. They're on a 30-degree slope with fairly solid rocks and a geotex fabric under those rocks to maintain the bank. So I'd just like to point out that when this report is officially given to the community board, that the question of that, and then the only other is question, and then the only other reference to grass carp in this whole report is on page 103, where it says that as an action plan that it's been referred to DOC and WRC. Well, if my question is, what have DOC and WRC done about it? Because there is, for the community board members, it's a fairly robust process to go through. These carp are under one company controls the breeding of them and supply. DOC has to inspect along with other interested parties such as iwi as to the suitability.
That's your time, Mark.
Is it?
That's,
So,
yeah, 5 minutes goes quick.
Okay, I'd just like to ask that in closing, that we have a number of the residents here that are supportive of it. And in terms of doing a study on the control methods, there was only one done, and it's all the stuff about planting, which can be debunked very easily.
Were there any questions of Steve?
Has anyone got a question?
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do is I'll hand this around. This is a company called New Zealand Waterways Restorations. The principal of that company was going to come down and speak today, but he's taken ill. He couldn't make it. It would have been far better hearing from him. They deal with about 40 councils in New Zealand, mainly Tauranga Council.
We could just have Bess ask her question,
Yes.
and if you wanted to table that's
Yeah,
fine.
I'll table this and
Okay.
you can pass it. This is the jobs they've done with through Tauranga Council.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, are they edible? I don't know, but are they edible?
Yes,
And
they
how
are.
big do they grow?
China, they're a native of Asia. China farms 5 million tonnes a year,
So
but
they're-
we don't eat them here.
Oh, hang on, hang on.
Well,
Hang on, you know, there's a food shortage,
yeah, well,
prices
there
in
you go.
here in the shops.
These fish, if they are ever supplied into a waterway, cost about $80 each. They're herbivores. They're very hard to catch on a hook and line. The company that does that company there, they actually have if they put fish into a waterway, they're managed. And they'll come in and they can drop a fishing game, have the same system. They drop a wire, electric wire into it, but like a taser, they stun them and the fish will pop to the surface. They catch them, have a look at them. If they're all big fatties, there's too, not enough. If they're little skinnies, there's too many. So they manage them that way and they monitor the ponds in that regard.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll send you
Um,
the link to that website.
Now I want to fish.
Yeah, this report will get scanned and distributed to the board. Yes, correct. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. And next I would like that, we have tried, just so that you are aware, Stephen, we didn't get an answer.
It's very busy.
Yeah, we've tried to call another speaker, but I'd like to now invite Paul.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm a long-term resident at Beach also, kia ora. And I've actually come up here from Tauranga, Papamoa, and where these grass carp have been installed to clean up the waterways around the Royal Palm Beach estate of Papamoa, all the waterways through there. They're also used in the lakes at Tauriko, and they've turned really brackish looking water into lovely looking water, and they do it in a really short time. You'll see from the report that they are grazing fish. They don't root down into the roots at the bottom. They just control the layer of weed. I do have a selfish motive for seeing the lake clean, apart from the aesthetic of a beautiful looking lake, is that there's a group of about 20 guys who sail radio control boats there. And it's a real bugger getting your keel caught up in weed and it drifting off into a bank because it won't steer anymore. But I've watched the lake come and go through the seasons when the weed comes to the surface and it grows. And it's quite prolific. It grows out sometimes with this room onto the bank, into the centre, towards the middle of the lake. And the only way I've seen in the past is they go around and they spray it. It just kills everything. And it just dies and sinks to the bottom as a sludge. And it comes back to the surface and the scum drifts down the lake with the wind. And it really, if you've ever been over there, you can see just the build-up of this scummy mess at the bottom of the lake, and it gets a bit stinky. So having seen the success of it in the Bay of Plenty, and I know it's used in other lakes, I'd thoroughly recommend we seriously look at it, because the cost of spraying every year, I think, about $10,000 a year to get contractors in to spray it. You could put the carp in for less than that cost, and they will be managed by the company that runs them. And they can't breed, they're actually sterile. You'll see that in that report. So they're sterile when you receive them, so they can't breed in the lakes. But then I'd just like to lend my support, and I know there's a community of property owners around the lake that will, I don't know if it takes a petition to the way to manage it. The way the report that the council contracted a lot of report about plantings all the way around the side of the lake to stop the mower clippings going in is just nonsense. They only have to mow around the lake a couple of times and throw the clippings up onto the grass. But for having, it gets potentially a beautiful little lake, and we like the grass down to the edge of it. All the kids of our community play there. If we can clean up the water quality or protect the kids, then we'll get a place for recreation of all sorts. So that's me. Thank you very much for your time, but I'd really like some action on it. As I say, it's been 14 months. I'd hate to see the lake become ensnared in weed again. It's not a native weed, as this report you've received says it is. That's actually the original weed is a Sri Lankan. It's called a what's the designation of the weed?
It's Polymageton crispus. It's purely pondweed.
Yeah, so it's endemic throughout the country and Asian countries, so there may be native weeds amongst it, but that's not really the big issue. It's
Not just weeds.
May we just keep the conversation to the table? Sorry,
Sorry.
thank you. Any questions of Paul from the board? No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Could I
Thank
just add
you.
one quick comment? We're not telling the community board to get carp. What we're really asking for is a proper due diligence on the use thereof, which, and I maybe didn't make that clear. That we want to see is a proper study done, not a half-page cut and paste in 106 page report.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. I'd now like to invite Mike Bennett, please, from Whitianga Wakaama. Morena.
Imo ia tapu whakawhirangi tēnei rā whanui atunga mihi atu kia koutou, ki ngā atua ki runga ki raro ki a koe whaia res mō tō tātou karakia i tēnei rā. Nō rā. Kia ora, my name is Mike. I'm the current president of Whitianga Wakaama. I'm sure you've all had time to kind of go through the proposal that I put through. Just setting a little bit of context, Wakaama is a national and international sport. It is one of the fastest growing sports for youth, especially young girls between 13 and 18. We successfully hosted the long distance nationals here back in April. It was pretty hard to miss. There were probably 2,000 to 3,000 extra people in town that weekend. I have a support letter here from the national body, Wakaama New Zealand. I'd like to take a look.
Thank you.
Okay, so why am I here? First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the support that we've had since we established our club back in 2015 from TCDC, and I believe it's the Park and Recreation branch. Our support is to store our waka on, originally we're at Robinson Road, but now we're actually by the Karapatiki Bridge there. So I also would like to acknowledge the previous club that was established here in the early 2000s. It was much with Joe Davis, James Webster, I believe Bess was on board, I believe Richard was on board as well. So I want to acknowledge our relationship that we had with that club. We have a very strong relationship with the club and with Ngāti Hei. We are currently using some of their equipment and work. Also, we've established a positive rapport with the local neighbours. We actually have a storage shed on one of the neighbours' properties, which used to be owned by one of our club members, but about 2 years ago, the house was sold. And to our fortune, the current owner has allowed us to keep our shed, a very humble, small shed to store our gear on site. So we're very, very fortunate, but that house is up for sale. And so now we're looking for other arrangements about where we're going to keep our gear. So in the proposal, I mentioned about securing, I guess, a permanent arrangement that we can continue either storing our waka where they currently are, or I've also proposed some other sites. I'm not sure how they work in terms of the availability of those sites, but I thought it would be feasible to suggest some options. I guess I look at it as kind of three possible options. First option would be we stay exactly where we are. We have an agreement that we can continue to keep our waka still there, and we keep providing support and services. Option two, possibly, which would be probably my preferred option, is to move our waka to slightly higher ground, which I believe is in front of 153 Buffalo Beach Road. Now, if you know that area, it's a slightly raised, almost like a ramp that never floods. Well, we've never seen it flood. In the last 2 or so years, we've noticed a lot more flooding incidents, storm surges. And if you know that little area, it just swings straight up that little channel where we leave our waka. And so we often have to move our waka to keep them safe away from that site. We're having to do that more and more often. Just nature of climate change, I guess. So that would be possibly option two. I did look at another possible option. I don't know if it's actually possible, but where I think it's the Mercury Bay Boating Club to have their container, that's also an ideal spot because it's slightly raised. It still provides safe launching sites into the bay, and it has that little accessible ramp there as well. So For us, the need for safe launching and landing sites is essential. We've recently started a youth mentoring program with Mercury Bay Area School. So we have 14, 15-year-old paddlers out on the water and experienced this is their first time out on the water. So providing a safe launching site is imperative for the safety of our, not only our youth paddlers, but for all our paddlers, which is why we're quite reluctant to move further into the bay. The further you go towards the bay, even by the boat club, you often see storm surges or that ocean swell coming in, which makes it kind of unsafe to be able to launch in certain weather. So what are we looking for? We're looking for an agreement that we can store our waka on one of those potential options. Our preferred option would be the slightly higher raised ground, but possibly getting neighbour approval might be difficult, despite our reasonably positive rapport with the local neighbours. So we just trying to throw some options out there. I don't know if there are some other sites that could be possibly suggested for us as well.
Good timing.
But, yeah, so sure.
Just before you disappear, are there any questions, Kelly?
So I was in the kitchen for the tournament and just loved the buzz and the whole thing. Yeah, we're a couple of aunties. How many people, because it's not just young people, I was quite impressed by the number of older people and also people with disabilities involved with Wakaama. So currently, how many people involved in your club and what are your aspirations for the club?
Aspirations.
Excuse me, before you answer that, can I just say something here? It hasn't closed down yet, but we hear the Oscar program is closing down at the
Hang on, Bess.
service centre. Yeah, but this is the Wakaama kids. They're going to benefit from the same. That's it.
Okay.
So aspirations for our club is we want to grow, of course, and to grow we need, safe launching sites. Obviously, we have to deal with the weather, and the weather is the weather. Our main goal and my main focus and our club focus, community focus, is to promote paddling for a multiple range of ages. So we're really trying to push into youth mentoring, trying to get youth paddlers going. The total health benefits and the holistic healing, if I did top 5 models of healing basically with Wakaama are just, they're incredible. Possibilities of Waka are amazing. And just ensuring continuity of our positive relationship with the TCDC and Parks and Recreations, I think will allow us some consistency, some continuity, and also just confirming our space with, we've heard rumours there are other developments happening. So just rumours, but yeah, we just want to be able to work with our community, work with other groups and community groups that are operating and developing as well. So that's kind of what we like to see.
Peter.
Just one question, Mike. For the storage facility, does it need to be undercover?
So we're not actually looking to store or cover the waka themselves. I mean, that would be amazing, but what we actually really need is a reasonably small shed or a space to store our paddling gear. So our life jackets, our paddles. That's our main priority because we know the current house is for sale and it could sell anytime soon. And we're going to be out of the storage site. And obviously, we like a space that's close, so we don't have to transport gear and lose time between trainings. So eventually, a club space beyond the target, but that's so far down the track that
So you just want a safe space where you can house your gear, just like all the other boating clubs in the area.
Yeah, and I don't believe we've ever had a written or an official agreement. So I guess I'm just worried that we may lose the site that we've been using for the last 6 or 7 years. So our main goal, or my main goal, would be from today would be to secure some kind of agreement that we had permission to either continue using the site that we have right now, or to be able to look at other options and sites that provide a safe space.
Thank you.
And thank you for
No problem. Thank you for coming in. All right. Next, I would like to invite June Bennett. You coming to speak to us this morning? Welcome.
Kia ora, June.
You know the drill.
I know the drill. I should do up to 9 years, shouldn't I? Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to follow up on what I spoke about in July about the harbour consent renewals and our harbour dredging of the, just in the river and the Whittianga, especially in front of the Dundas Street ramp, because sand build up there is getting worse. And what worries me more than anything is that with people going out there to their boats, and if the sand build up is too much, it gets into their motors. And that can be a very dangerous situation because the tidal flow there is swift and it can be jolly dangerous trying to get out there. So, and I actually spoke about this earlier, but I've had no communication since. So I'm just wondering whether this is going to come up in your shore management, line management meeting again, or whether it has just been put on hold. So I'd like to know what's going on with that, because I was waiting for somebody to get back to me and they haven't. So
Sure. Sorry about that. We'll make sure that we look into that.
can you look into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very
Was
much.
there anything else that you wanted to add? Just that.
No, this was most important. And I noticed that there's a lot going on with what's with the sort of the seeds and everything else in what you're doing. So yeah, I think you're on to it.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Thanks, June. Short and sweet. Right, may I next, thank you.
Thank you.
Is Patty Stewart here? Hello, welcome. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Oh, and Patty has this, yeah, I think everyone's got a copy.
But Patty's good. I did this morning, got the printer going. I'm here just as a resident and my name's Patty. I'm actually born down the road here. Our family farmed all around the peninsula. I have about 30 years experience working in restoration ecology and these sort of things. Obviously, I'm here to talk about the Mercury Reserve. Does that have what's its real name? Does anyone know? Terrace just then.
Always known it as Mercury Reserve.
We'll call it that. But and I've also done so I'm not here as an expert, just as a resident, And I've worked for a couple of years on shorebird work for the Department of Conservation. So I've spent quite a bit of time around the coast. And I've just got two things I wanted to say here. I've got some photos there. I understand the shoreline management, sort of way we're looking at it in terms of retreating, that sort of stuff. And I'm just humbly asking if folks can look at this from the context of this reserve in isolation. And why that is that for those, when we think about the reserve, there's rock at the north and the south of it. Okay. And so that poor little amenity reserve there, it gets a double whammy of impacts from end effect, like we see in front of the hospital, and we got that there. And so basically, the situation now, if you look at my bottom photograph, is we've had some stuff happen there, and it's getting so squeezed there now in terms of trying to do stuff. So in terms of a Hobie cat there, to put a mast down, there's a picture in the bottom there. Without trying to overhype it, basically the mast has to swing down to lower it down. So I help bring that mast down, and I have to stand across the footpath to receive the mast as it comes down. Okay, and that's now, once we get through all this disease and pestilence that we've had for the last few years, we're going to get busy again, and that's Highway 25. And so what my talking point is here is I'm just supporting the idea that in this instance, that council look at and actually above the mean height of the springs, so not being aggressive with the beach or anything like that. Look at restoring that. I don't know what the plans are for Ohuka, but this area here, we could have a few meters back. It's difficult now after this just manoeuvring a vehicle and a trailer there, just as things are when they're quiet, because to get anything there, you've got to drive out onto the road to get your line right. And that's all I wanted to say there. You know, it's a lovely little reserve, and I know there's lots of stuff going on with the shoreline stuff, but in itself, that's a lovely reserve for people and for sort of low impact community use. And I just want to come and support my idea here, speak for it, that if it can be part of the plans to actually restore part of that. And I'm not phased about how that would happen, But I see, in conclusion, I see that there are physical issues there with the hard engineering north and south of it. And then practically as a member of the public using the beach, it's just getting harder and harder, and possibly a bit, in the future, there won't be much there for us to use.
Thank you so much for coming in. Are you aware that on the 16th of September, 2:00 in our town hall, there's going to be a session, a public information meeting around shoreline management plan and looking at priorities for this area. So I would absolutely recommend, if you were available and had time to pop down there.
16th
September, 2:00 town hall, and everybody, of course, will be welcome. But it would be great for you to pop down there, share some of this thinking, and hear a little bit about what the planning is. Okay, thank you, and thank you for this. Okay, I'd now like to ask, quick Delhi, one other question.
Yeah, no, quick question to Dean. That town hall one on the 2nd is the whole of Mercury Bay or just Whitianga?
16th.
16th.
Yeah, so it's all of Mercury Bay.
So I'm just thinking of any people who are from around the ward.
Yeah.
That would be the one for them to come to.
Yeah, and so within that session, they'll look at the prioritising work that they've done for the shoreline management plan implementation. So that's building upon the work that was done in the shoreline management plan pathways. And so there is a list of sites that are looking to be prioritised, and Makukapa is one of those.
Yeah, just checking that the Cook's Beach people might be interested
It includes
coming to that 2 p.m. one.
It includes Cook's Beach.
Yeah. I think that is questioning I want to for you, Patty.
Sorry, I let you table too early.
On that bottom picture, do you think a container could fit on there for the waka gears? Just
yes, anything's possible. At the moment it could, but then there's less room for everyone to move the vehicles. These people need a place.
Yes,
they understand.
So, thank you.
Come.
Okay, that's all right. Now, before I close public forum, there are a couple of people in the room that haven't spoken. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak that may not have registered, that we don't have their name for? No, that being said, may I please have a mover and a seconder for public forum? Thank you, Delhi, seconded by Peter. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Right, no questions from one. Carried, sorry. Our next item is any items not on the agenda, and I would just like to note that we are moving, just due to timing and availability of staff, item 3.2, our work program, will be moving to after our minutes for confirmation. So moving up the order of the paper. Item 1.6, any conflict of interest? None. Right, item 1.7, which is our minutes for confirmation. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? That's on page 4. To mover and a seconder for our minutes.
I'll move.
Thank you, Peter. Seconded. Thank you, Bez. I had a couple of comments. Oh. Should be 4, 2 typos. And I just wanted to say, with regards to the public forum piece that we had from Peter Grant, he went away, looked at the bits of information that we had about what we now call the shark bite and what we were planning to do there.
Yes.
And he sent me an email and he said, thank you. He was impressed with the plan going forward, and he thanked us all for our time, but he is still concerned about Makukapa Reserve, and that's certainly a feeling that we are getting again this morning. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay, that being said, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, carried. We have a quorum here, so we don't need that. Okay,
I was
thank
just
you.
going to ask that.
Right, so that takes us now to item 3.2, which is on page 98, and that is our work program. And I think beaming in, here he is.
Morning, board.
Morning.
Morning now.
Yeah, this is awkward.
It is a bit awkward. Can't we go to that screen?
No, I think we have to unplug it.
Oh,
So
okay.
everybody
Okay,
will
no
have to
worries.
Sorry, we're just reorganising ourselves.
We just want to see your smiling face here, Bruce.
Very good.
Right, do you want to just start, or do you want us to launch into questions, or?
So good morning, board. Just really quickly. So obviously this report is a little bit different to what you normally would receive. It's in two parts. So one is closing off the previous financial year, so the end of June, and then we've got the first report for this financial year, which is the work, basically the update to the end of July. So only 1 month into the financial year. And obviously it always seems a little bit weird that we're into September already and we've got this kind of big lag, but we don't actually close off the previous financial year until kind of early August, by the time all the costs have come through from contractors and everything's kind of been balanced and put in its right place. So that's why things do feel like they're coming through a little bit late. So the first report on the work for the last financial year is kind of more slimmed down. It just gives you your annual plan budget, where we got to at the end of the year, a brief comment, and then a status colour, RAG status, and then back to the normal format for the second report. So more than happy to take any questions on any of that stuff.
Right, and I know John and Caroline, if you have any questions as well, you're able to just raise your hands if you want to. Anything from within the room? Wow, looks like you may be getting off extra lightly today, Bruce. No, nothing? Caroline online. She got a hand up?
Yes.
Right, Caroline, I think you're on mute at the moment. Oh, no.
I was just acknowledging that you said,
Oh.
raise our hands.
Oh,
So I
no
said yes.
problem.
Oh, and I'll mute myself again. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you. Can we just get a time frame update, Bruce, on South Highway West?
South Highway West, yes. I'm just trying to find my one. Oh, yep.
It's the top of page 2.
Yes, and halfway down on the second plan. So obviously we so through the chair we are continuing with that project that is in the current financial year. There's 570,000 to resolve that issue. There are some more protracted discussions underway at the moment, looking at a slightly different plan around the different land parcels. So there's valuers involved, external valuers. And so we've just got to go through that process. So there's a bit of a delay. So I don't know. I don't have any kind of time frame for you. I don't want to give you a date and then we don't meet it.
Okay.
But I understand that Ed and the team are busy working on that one with the external parties. And I believe an update is coming back to you guys at some stage in the next couple of months.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yes, Stelly.
Sorry to bring up the Hahe bollard, but could we have an indication of what will be on the signs that are to be erected? And I see that there is still some research to be done around gate options.
Yeah, so through the chair, I know that Derek and the team are working on the gate option at the moment and just making sure that whatever we do put in there is fit for purpose and works and doesn't cause any other undue issues. I don't know off the top of my head, apologies, about exactly what the sign will say. Obviously, the sign will highlight the health and safety issues or risks, I should say, of that area, and that anyone accessing it needs to be doing so at a very slow speed. It'll just talk about the competing different modes of transportation and people using the beach. So, but I don't know the exact wording. But if that's something that the board is really keen to see, I'm happy that we bring that past you guys, so that you know what we're actually looking at putting up, or just give you a bit of a heads up at least, so you know before it gets put up on site.
So through the chair, I was slightly miffed, for want of a better word, around the facetious comments about how many different languages would have to be on that sign. So I imagine the sign will be in English with some pictorial representation of potential boat launching and stuff like that.
Through the chair, I imagine so. I'm not aware of those comments that you referred to. Apologies, councillor, but yeah, no, I imagine that, yeah, we want to try and, you know, as we always talk about, picture tells 1,000 words. So let's go with the infographic, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to see this one put to bed as soon as possible.
Agree, yep.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Oh, the other one was through the chair, sorry, Tarapatiki Reserve Boat Club timeline. That's just kind of.
Are you talking about, the actual boating club, not the
historic values assessment? So
yeah,
when do we think we might be able to put the boating club to bed as well? Bed them down on their foundation, off their poles.
Yeah, so through the chair, I can answer that one. So the the Tapatapa Atia, and the boat club. So it still is in the hands of the boat club. I've spoken to the person that's organising their planning applications twice in the last 3 weeks. And so again, they have everything that they need, and the discussions are ongoing. But again, I wouldn't be able to put a time frame on when they'll complete that process.
So they haven't lodged.
So they haven't lodged. They're preparing their applications. They have a bundle of their applications, and I know that they did have a meeting of the Boating Club Trust either last Thursday or the Thursday before, just to give their membership a bit of an update as well.
Is their cultural assessment completed?
So that would be between their archaeologists that they've engaged and Ngāti Hei. I haven't, I'm not aware that they have completed that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, Best, anything else? No.
I don't know if this is relevant, but when it says like street lights, they're all completed. I was out on community patrol 2 weeks ago, and all the lights in Hannon's Road were out, the bottom of Cook Drive, and I can't remember the rest because I didn't take a pen, something to write it down on. So
I think, so are you looking at the first page?
Yes.
Bruce, you might want to jump in here, but so one is for renewals, which is where we've
what are you liking?
What Bruce do you want?
page 99.
So through the chair, it sounds like what we're talking about is the power supply and the operations of the streetlights, as opposed to what's on the work program, which is renewals and improvements to the streetlights. So yes, I'm aware that we have been dealing with around the district, actually, quite a few outages around a number of different areas. So not just in Whitianga, also, like I say, other locations around the peninsula. The team, the roading team, are working hard with PowerCo. It's most often when you get definitely when you get a whole street out, it's usually a power supply issue, and so that the power supplied by PowerCo, they manage the transmission, and normally it'll be a fuse or something's gone out, and it does take them a while to fix those often. So the team are working as hard as they can to try and make sure, basically when we get a call through about that, our customer services people send that through to PowerCo, but it can take a while to get things resolved. So we're just trying to escalate those matters where we can, if they're taking a long time to get fixed and rectified.
Yes, I have to accept that.
it's through the chair. I understand it's a frustration, and yeah, like I say, you're not the only board to have raised it. We're doing what we can with PowerCo, but we are reliant on them to resolve those issues.
Thank you, Bruce.
No worries.
All right, if there are no further questions of Bruce, did we do a mover and a seconder? No, may I have a mover and a seconder for the move? Thanks, Dallies.
I'll second.
Thanks, Peter. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carried. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Will do. Right, where are we at now? Item going back to the start of our order paper 2.1, which is our Mercury Bay Correspondence report. And Heather, is she going to join us? Yes, there she is.
Morning, Heather.
Good morning, board.
Yeah.
I'll take it as read, but there was just one other document. Helena's got a copy there if anyone wants to see the hard copy. And that was the letter of support to the Kuautunu Peninsula Trust for their fundraising application to do pampas control on Blackjack Reserve. So that's been sent out, and we've also received a thank you email from Christina Pickford on behalf of that trust.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. Do we have any questions of the correspondence report for Heather? No. Right, may I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thanks, Bess.
I'll second that.
By Peter. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, carried. Thanks, Heather. Rest
Thank
up.
you.
Get better. So that takes us now to item 3.1, which is the Cooks Beach Lakes Management. And beaming in should be.
Sorry, Chair, we've got Britt coming into the room. He has been advised to come down, so it might just be a couple of minutes.
No, that's fine.
We can either.
Action schedule.
Oh, this is great.
Should we move to our action schedule, which is item 4.1,
Yes.
while he maneuvers through the building? Thank you. Right, so just so everyone knows, we're on page 105. May I have the mover and a seconder, please, for this report? Thank you, Delhi. Thank you, Bess. Are there any questions of this report? I was thinking perhaps June's request, would that sit in here until we have communicated with her? And yes,
We can do that. Yes.
yeah.
Rika, I can just comment on June's request just for a little bit of information. When she originally came and talked to the board, I think it was a couple of meetings ago, she was in support of Noel Hewlett's comments about the general siltation of the harbour, and she also requested regular cleaning of the ramp where it gets debris built up on it. So I did contact her. There was a number of conversations in text. A request for service was logged to regularly clean the Dundas Street boat ramp, and she's had a response to that from Alan Cooper. Actually, dredging of the harbour wasn't something that was considered, but all her comments about siltation, sorry, June, you're still there, so you'll hear this. So the comments on siltation were passed on to WRC, Waikato Regional Council, for a response. And so I can follow up with my regional council contact to see whether or not they've provided that information or where they're at with that detail.
Okay, thank you, Heather. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Heather.
Can I have a question?
You sure can.
Through the chair, particularly interested in the security camera draft policy, which is now at senior leadership review, and just want to emphasise, I've been communicating with Kane from Cook's Beach, who's taken the not taken it upon himself, that always sounds wrong, but he's taken a leadership role in looking at security cameras in Cook's Beach particularly. And I'm just wondering if he's been kept in the loop on what's happening with this policy and how long is the senior leadership review going to take, how soon? Basically, can we communicate to all the interested parties, people like Mark Bedford at Matarangi, and get that out to them to say that some action is actually happening, because I know things sometimes feel like they're growing through the system very slowly. and Kane's been very understanding. Do we have any update on that?
Do you have a response to that, Dean?
Yeah, just through the chair, I haven't communicated with Kane since, was it 2 or 3 months ago?
Where you and I spoke and
we were in that loop. And I'm not sure whether Paku or any of the team would have either, so I just need to take an action and follow up.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd appreciate that. I'm sure Kane would too. And the likes of Mark Bedford, there's a few that maybe the ratepayer chairs.
Yeah, that'd be a great place to start.
Would be a good place to start, but Kane, I know, has been communicating and looking for some guidance.
Any other questions of this action schedule? No. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we captured Mike Bennett's requests. And we didn't lose sight of those. Yeah, onto this.
It is an action, Chair.
Oh, great.
Action.
Okay, if there's nothing else, did I do a motion?
Yes, but need to make a motion.
Yeah, so all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Carried. All right, thank you. Which takes us to item 3.1. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Which is the Cook's Beach Lakes Management on page 14 of your order papers.
Has everyone met these guys?
Oh, well, I was going to say, yes, you might like to do a little bit of an introduction. Have you met all of the board?
Yes.
You have? Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, and Greg, you know everyone, of course. Yeah.
But just for the benefit of everyone else, my name is Brett Houston. I'm the Water Services Manager based in Thames. I look after wastewater, water and stormwater utilities, as well as managing the contract with Veolia, who are our main ops and maintenance for those services. I've been with the council about 8 months now. Have come from the commercial side of the water industry, but for my sins 20 years ago, I was the contract manager for Veolia, looking after TCDC, so I'm very intimately aware of the work that goes on.
My name's Greg Roach. I'm the Water Services Field Rep, covering the water, wastewater and stormwater who's between Ahei and Correspondence, the northern part of the peninsula. Reporting to Brett, been sort of with council for just over 4 years now. 16 years in the water industry, previously coming from the contract of Veolia, and prior to that. So my role is sort of the interface between the contractor and council and public. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just go through our comprehensive report that we have prepared. In July last year, there was a submission tabled by Steve Lloyd in relation to weed control and management of the lakes at Cook's Beach. There was proposed about the introduction of carp and looking at weeds and algae, etc. The Mercury Bay Community Board tasked the Water Services team to investigate around carp and weed control for the ponds and lakes district-wide. It should be also noted that the Waikato Regional Council also, as part of their site compliance report, which we got in May 22, issued a request for the review of the plantings around the lakes. So it was a joint task that came through to us. The purpose of this report is to update the Mercury Bay Community Board on the progress of the Cook's Beach Lakes management to date, and to seek their support to progress to the next steps, which we'll discuss further.
We commissioned a lakes management options assessment report by by Submerged Environment and Scientific Dive Services. They are a very reputable company who's done a lot of work around lakes. While the dive services is in there, that is part of their service within lakes. So they focus on the ecological and management around lakes. The report presented a series of recommendations focusing on managing the lakes, and we have brought those now to the council. And mitigating the riparian impacts identified in the report was prioritised by our team. And from that, we have gone through and developed a restoration plan for the riparian plantings around there. So just looking at the Cooks Beach Lakes Management Options Assessment, the key areas assessed were recreational and visual amenities, stormwater treatment and conveyance, ecological and biodiversity value. Against each of these areas, Submerged Environment assessed the catchment impacts, riparian impacts, and in-lake impacts, and what actions could be undertaken to mitigate those. A prioritisation matrix was formulated, and then a list of recommendations. They included educational campaign to support community stakeholder engagement. We feel that if we do work on the lakes, we need the community to be involved and supporting that work. Prioritising short, medium-term, long-term goals on the lakes, creating catchment, riparian and in-lake management plans, and creating monitoring and reporting of those plans, and an overall management plan. Sorry, that probably reads a little bit. I've summarised it, and it probably reads like it's repeating itself. The first thing we did was we looked at the quality of the lakes. And while the lakes are not, it's a Lake B is not a recreational lake. It is a catchment lake. Lake A, the largest lake, has some limited recreational use. The quality of the water there is not suitable for swimming, for in-water activities. It could be used for boats, as model boats, and other recreational things, but it is not for use.
Can I just clarify? It was never the intention that it would be used for swimming?
It was always designed, I think, for limited recreational use, and we've confirmed that is the case with the quality of the water. It does not allow it to be a full recreational use lake.
That's Lake A.
Lake A. Lake B is not for any recreational use. With the aim of trying to improve the quality of the lakes, we undertook a separate technical review of the weed. And this is where the original request to look at carp came from. The investigation developed a small, to show this, a small table, a small sheet, sorry, looking at the plants. Just show people. Yep, right, that one. And what we found was that the weed is not actually a weed. It is a plant that improves the quality of the water, that actually works on the products in the water and cleans them up. Now, for years, we have been spraying, harvesting, trying to remove this weed, when Submerged Environment told us, in actual fact, we should be using that to help improve the lake performance. So at that stage, we realised that there was no need for grass carp to be introduced to remove that weed. We wanted to promote the growth of the weed in areas.
So just step in there for a second, just to note that One was these were native species as well, predominantly native species in the lake, which the consultant scientist had was surprised to see that growth locally and said that, you know, it'd be worth encouraging the growth or maintaining it rather than get rid of it. Yeah. Not commonly found around the area, so he was quite impressed to find that.
Just through the chair, despite our efforts to try and remove it.
Yes. Right.
And at quite considerable cost as well. From that, we then tasked Submerged Environment to prepare a riparian restoration plan. They did a site investigation and identified zones from their site assessment where plantings could be done in the lake. And again, we were focusing on water quality, biodiversity, limited recreational use in Lake A, and visual amenity. Now, within the plan, we identified no planting zones, potential wetland zones, amenity tree zones. We looked at the wetted edge zone, which is the main entry off the roads into Lake A. And what they came up with was, what page? Excuse me. Right, that's insane. We came up with a very good plan that showed where we could put plants. We are trying to keep windows through the lake to increase people's visual use or enjoyment from the lakes, and keeping the plants to a reasonable height. So again, we don't interrupt people's view or enjoyment of the lake. From that, they came up with a list of plants that we could put into the different locations, and we have priced those to purchase them and install them. At the same stage, they also recommended that the Parks and Reserve team look at the plantings around the edge of the lakes. Again, same issues, visual, biodiversity, using local plants and allowing people to have access around the lakes, walk around the lakes. From that, we have now developed a project request form, which is going into the LTP review with council. And that is to do the in-lake work as well as the surrounding the lake work. So that will be a capital project. And it will need to be approved by council before we can proceed. We are going to continue doing some maintenance work over the next few months, but Submerged Environment made it clear that the plantings should not be done until in the period April, May through to September. So we have actually missed the period this year to do it. We don't have the money for it either, but so this is going into the 24-34 LTP to get it reviewed and approved, hopefully. And then we would start the work in July next year.
In the maintenance that you will continue on with, is there a sort of degree of confidence that it will deal with some of the issues in terms of, you know, the smell and things that people were talking about coming from the lake?
There will always be small issues, but I think if we maintain it correctly, and part of what they've come up with is a lot of that smell appears to come from the high end of Lake A, isn't it? Where we get weed sitting and not removing. And I am talking about grass weeds here, not these plants that we want to promote.
Right.
We need to do some maintenance around there, and I think there was talk about trying to get the flow through that area as well, wasn't it, Chris?
Yeah, so part of with this finishing off with the development there, we've seen sort of a low flow in through the eastern end of the lake, which is the narrow end. So it's also fairly shallow, and a bit of sedimentation build up there. But also it's a lot of vegetation gets blown just by the prevailing wind into that corner, and obviously organic mass is just sitting there decomposing. So there are some options for us to apply some products that will help kill off any of the algae, but we do need to look at also some other products that will help to break that down in those areas. So there are some other operational costs that we're just exploring at the moment and how best to utilise those across the lake. It's mainly a couple of pockets really, and again dependent on temperature. You know, if we have a extremely hot summer and low flows, low rainfall, then it's going to exacerbate that situation.
Okay, thank you. Sally.
Can I ask a couple of questions? It's a shame that you weren't here for the presentation from representatives from Cox Beach. Two questions. From our team from Cox Beach this morning, we heard that the grass carp actually mows the weed, keeps it down to an acceptable level rather than eliminate it. So we in the spirit of working in with our local communities, I accept the report and I accept the science behind it. Is there any appetite to trial grass carp in there as a lawnmower effect and allow sort of the clarity? I don't mean the clarity depth, I mean the clarity of the surface space for those limited recreational activities.
So when we first received this and dealing with members of the Cox Beach community, the looked into the situation and it did initially sound like a good idea and was received in that manner. Also with the information that had been provided from experiences in Tauranga there. But as we looked into it a little bit more, there was a number of things concerning. Is number one is that there's no guarantee that they're going to eat the plants that you want. The other thing is this is a native species, so we don't want to remove it all. Are they targeting those species? We can't guarantee that. So they could be targeting other species along the edge of the lake and creating other issues. The other one was actually being able to, because one of the aspects of allowing them to release is that you have to ensure that they can't escape from that environment. And we can't do that, we don't believe, feasibly in the lake. I think the recent flooding is quite clear that to try and fence off an area to stop them escaping and potentially having downstream impacts, either further down Cook Stream or across into the Longreach subdivision. Just if we did put some sort of fencing up, the cost, but also the aspect of being able to, in flooding, is that going to create another issue of, either damage or increasing the lake levels because of fencing protection. So there's a number of key aspects there, I think. The other one was expressed really by concerns of the scientists that we got. It was just the effect on creating sedimentation along the edge of the lakes, where they're adding plants there which are destabilising the banks. So
We did hear this morning that there's geotech fabric in rocks on a 30-degree slope in that lake, so that destabilising the banks wouldn't be a problem.
yes, that's correct. But if you look along the edge of the lakes where, the lakes lift up and down, so there's a strip margin. Definitely there's already plantings there and not blocks. So I think that's more the area of concern along the edge there.
It's interesting because looking at the website of the company that manages the grass cart, there seems to be some quite successful applications in other parts of the country. I think our friends from Cook's Beach feel like they've been stonewalled a bit, and I know I'm putting you in a difficult position by asking that, but is there not a solution that could be a combination of utilising grass carp and planting? Some of the other, from the results of this study, which is very comprehensive, it took me a while to wade through that. Is there a compromise solution there? I've even heard members of the community out there volunteering to buy a carp and neighbour because they are quite expensive to purchase.
Through the chair, what I would suggest is I think we need to put this riparian plan in place.
Yeah.
Monitor it for a period to make sure it's working, then review again whether we would look at putting cart in to maintain. So I'm not saying we won't, but I would suggest first we need to put in this plan, get it working properly, and then review again. Would we look at that?
That's good to hear, Brett. I also see in our suggested resolutions that there will be stakeholder engagement of the riparian restoration plan. And I imagine that would be a conversation that might be quite interesting for the people who have presented this morning about whether or not they're prepared to support a trial and be part of that riparian planting and that monitoring, and then what that next step might look like.
Brett, what was the time frame around the stakeholder engagement? Like, if you get your endorsement today or support of these recommendations today, goes to council to be ratified, I would guess. When would you look to start?
What I would say is the first thing is we need to get this agreed at the LTT that it is an item for 24-25 year.
The council table.
Yeah, it's got to be approved there. Then we would organise post that to start the engagement with the community. So we would, once we know we can do the work, then we will engage the community and take them through the riparian plan. There's no point doing that engagement if we get everybody's hopes up that we're going to do this and then it's deferred to a later period by the council.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'd rather work through those steps first and then say yes. So it could be later this year or early next year. Remember, we've got until potentially July.
Yes.
The LTP.
Yeah. Before we can start doing any work.
Yeah.
So we would engage the community during that period.
Okay.
I think, through the chair, I think we also need to have the plan for the parks and reserves people. So it's not just what we're doing with the lakes. We come back with a full plan of the whole area, and they have not done that yet.
And they're working on that at the moment, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've put a draft plan in here, but it doesn't say the plants and the areas yet. They're still working on that, but they prepared that for me so that we could see that they have been working on that on the draft.
So through the chair, and you know, it's not a personal attack on you two gentlemen, and thank you very much for the hard work that you've done so far. The sense I get from the Cook's Beach community is they feel like they haven't been brought along on the journey. They feel like they haven't had enough communication and engagement up to this point, and certainly one of the things I'd like to see is a representative from that company as part of an engagement or stakeholder meeting so that we can actually look at the results or some of those concerns that you've both raised, and you've raised some really good points. And, you know, as we're finding with some of our other projects around the district, that community engagement is really, really important. Otherwise people feel frustrated and then they hit social media and they, in a vacuum of knowledge, they'll make up what's happening. So it will warm the cockles of my heart to know that there is some engagement happening. So,
and I think a response from this board, depending on the resolutions that we support today or not, going back to particularly those people that have contacted us to say, look, this is the current thinking, this is what we're striving towards, so we need to go back to people as well.
Yeah.
Peter.
I just, through the chair, just query the timing, Brett. If I got you right, you wanted to put this planting plan forward to assure yourself that the funding was available and then look at the stakeholder engagement. I might have thought that the stakeholder engagement should perhaps come first because it may impact and change the plan that you put into council for approval.
We've developed the proposal to go through to the LTP as being flexible. So there is the ability there to move things around. Does this work? Does that not work? Is there things we could do to adjust it? So we've made some contingency and allowances within that. But it's very hard for us to go to the community and say, we want your input in this, but we don't know if it's going to happen. It's the chicken and egg. So we've decided we need to go through council first and get approval that this project will be happening, and then fine tune the rough plan that we've got with the community. That's our thinking.
And just for clarity, this piece of work sits outside of the Cook's Beach stormwater stakeholder engagement programs that are coming together, just so that everybody's clear.
Yep.
Sure.
And through the chair, we also heard from the gentleman who presented this morning that the grass slopes are well used by families as well. So there's that amenity, grass amenity that we have to fit somehow with the planting plan as well. Yep.
So if I can just give a bit of background on that too, is that the WRC had some site visit, and they felt that there wasn't the original plantings that had been set up there and developed weren't sufficient coverage as had been approved under the original consent. Okay, so some of that was that I think early 2000s that there would have been some plants that would have been taken out either by our contractors in mowing or whatever, and that's how some of those grassed areas are just grass. And then we supplied WRC with the actual planting plan that had been established, and that's where they came back to us and said that they were expecting there to be more plants in that area, and that was one of the reasons that we've gone back to environmental develop. And so what he's done is given us, set out certain areas that will be clear spaces, others that have certain types of planting, but he's taken into account visual aspects of it. And I think, as Brett said, that's where we need to then get into talking about it, and we can make some adjustments to it. But the idea is that if we do something here, then we may have to increase some more planting around, different types of planting around. The other one is that it's native species and locally sourced. So the idea is that culturally and environmentally better for the lakes. Just if I could just touch back, just on your query about potentially using the grass carpet alongside some other things, and that was certainly a consideration. I think the key thing is, and really it's, decision making for the community board, but is that setting up grass carp there doesn't actually change what the upstream issues. So what we needed to understand was, they're like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So we're putting those in there, and yep, might make the lakes look good for a year or two, but having solved those impacts, what are those factors that are causing this issue? And I think that was really the key. They might be useful as a tool for a certain period to tidy it up. It doesn't solve the problem. What are the external factors that are contributing to poor condition and water quality? The other thing with that was, as we looked into their submission and the Tauranga report, one of the things that cropped up to me was movement of grass carp out of the specified areas. And they had noted in the Tauranga report that potentially that was a water quality issue. And, the residents all know that, over the winter period and on days, a week, but that water can be quite turbid. And so, we're saying, is that going to be a problem to the grass carp actually doing what we're intending them to do? So I think, that's where we've gone down the track with submerged environmental, and we're looking at those aspects. And it's going to take small things, small changes within the catchments, and it may mean that we have to do some sort of use other options, maybe some products, chemical or biological products, to improve that water quality. But it's going to be key changes, a number of changes in the catchment area that will over time improve conditions in the lakes. So.
But through the chair, I just want to make sure we're not closing our minds completely to that. So, and just reassure our friends Cook's speech that could constitute part of that stakeholder engagement.
Thank you. Peter, did you have anything else? No. Bess? No. I'm just looking at my friends online. No, they're all good. Right. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we look at the resolutions here? I think we might have a bit of a solution. We might tweak one of them, which might help in terms of, can you put it up on that screen? So by adding to resolution 2, sorry, I'm just trying to get the zoom in. Approves, so we've just added Esther has helpfully added these yellow bits here. So resolution 2 would read, approves conducting of stakeholder engagement subject to council approval of a 23, 24, no, 23 year.
25.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Long-term plan project of the riparian restoration plan and parks and open spaces plan, planting plan with key stakeholder groups. The resident lakeside community and recreational users of the, well, I would just say key stakeholder groups. Well, we could say including the resident lakeside community. Yeah. And then adding a resolution 4, which says recommends that the council considers Cook's Beach Lake Management Project as part of the 24 Yeah, sorry, these years are confusing me. LTP process. So I don't know if we need the last one. Yes, that's what was. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, long term, yes.
Thinking annual plans.
I don't know if we need the fourth resolution as well.
Sorry, I'm going to just stand and remember.
Yes.
Through the chair, I would suggest probably one of the resolutions is that the Mercury Bay Community Board advocate the council for approval of that LTP submission.
Yeah, so Rebecca, John and I will have to push for that at the council table. The letter of support, meaning a formal support at council from the community board. Yeah.
Yeah, then through the chair, then number 2 then says, based on that approval, then you would approve that we would then get involved in stakeholder
Engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it is, reports.
No pressure. Oh, so you want to have that, okay. Being
Included in the
24-34 long-term plan.
so look at that.
I think we may be overcomplicating it even. So you could take, if you leave in 2, take out 4. You just need to tidy up the numbers. Does anyone feel comfortable with that? Can you read that from there? Okay. These numbers here too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we can all agree that ultimately the ultimate outcome, what we're all looking for is healthy lakes, you know, and so.
And good community engagement.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, always good community engagement, but the ultimate outcome from this will be that the lakes are, you know, the issues that community have brought to us are resolved. And we've got better water quality, clarity, and things like that. Is everybody comfortable with these resolutions as they sit?
Fine.
Yep.
Yes? All right. Should I get a mover and a seconder, or did we just jump straight into it? May I get a mover and a seconder, please, to receive this report?
I'll move.
Thanks, Delly.
I'll second.
Thanks, Peter. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, carried. All right, thank you. Thank you both. Right, and I believe that brings us to the end of the formal part of our meeting. So that is, what is that, 10:38? Meeting is closed. I don't need to do anything else, do I? That's it. All right. Thank you.
You have to shout drinks as well. You down at Gracie's later.
Yes. No,